Hello and welcome back to the Purpose Playbook. We are here today with an incredible man. I met this guy around about 6 weeks ago, and actually he had his wife was a bit cross with him because they had a spa day booked, and he came and met myself and Rich in Leeds. So he is Sean Dirrane, and he is the director of Cosmos, the owner, and he is going to tell us a bit about himself today. So, Sean, hi, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Yeah, nice introduction. And on that spa day, I got in a lot of bother. But I also said to you and Rich on the day that I wouldn't just do that for any old fool. Don't just put meetings in my diary for the sake of it. But we had an awesome meeting, and it's obviously brought us to.
I think your wife had come round to us by the end of it as well, so she wasn't too cross when you left. So, Sean, first of all, thanks for coming on. Tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
So I'm the managing director of Cosmos, and we're an organisation that works in the education sector. So we work primarily with disadvantaged young people, and the goal really is to help them have more positive outcomes in their education. And alongside that, within Cosmos, we build technology tools to support educators to have better outcomes with students. That's it in a nutshell. And we've built a number of tech products to support the sector.
Amazing, mate. So we've obviously met, and your story sort of really resonates with me. So what we're going to do is go right back, because I think a lot of people we talk to in this sector have a sort of reason and meaning behind, and yours is really special. So what I want to do is take it back. So talk to me about Sean's life, starting from the very beginning, because your story is inspirational. You know, when I sat with you and listened to it, I was like, wow, it's incredible. So I want people to hear your story. So take us right back to the start, and take us all the way up to sort of how you got to where you are.
Yeah, I mean, when we spoke, we like a chat, me and you, and we could talk all day, and it was an amazing. We had an awesome meeting. So I'll try and keep it somewhat succinct, but like right at the back, right to the start. So I was born in Ireland. I was born in a really remote island called the Aran Islands, and that's just off the coast of Galway. And if any of your listeners know where that is, I'll be very impressed. But really remote. Very different lifestyle to the life I lead today. My dad was a fisherman. My mum was a stay-at-home mother to 4 children. So I've got a brother and 2 sisters, biological. And I would say, my memories of my earliest days were, fraught with challenge. I would say poverty and domestic violence. I think you'll find that that's probably a theme that's run through my life. There's been a lot of challenges, an awful lot of domestic violence, and poverty was definitely a theme. And I think in our space, particularly mine and probably your space as well, we talk about disadvantaged and disadvantaged learners and disadvantaged young people. But I would go and say it was more than that. It was absolute outright poverty, I would say.
Yeah, and I think one of the things as well, I mean, Ireland back in those days, for people who don't understand, was so far behind England, weren't they? Like when we came over to England, Ireland was like 20 years behind everything we did here. I think it's caught up over the years, but it was so deprived in certain areas, wasn't it?
Yes. And I remember, it's not an awfully nice thing, but I remember when I first came, excuse me, the English used to call the Irish backwards. And I think you're right. And it was probably more challenging because of where, I lived on a remote island. So the island is 13 miles by 3 miles wide, very remote. I wasn't even born on the island because it didn't have a hospital. I was actually at the, I was boat across to Galway, born in Galway, and then boat back to the Aran.
It's exactly the same as mine. Like we were a remote island of 300 people. The nearest hospital's in Cork, 2 hours away. The nearest cinema is an hour and a half away. Like madness. Like it's hard to believe, actually, isn't it? When you talk about it, it's like, wow, it's crazy. You've got to get a boat to the mainland to then go to a hospital.
And you remember it. I remember the school I went to. I remember the house we grew. It was it was a small bungalow. I remember quite vividly. My dad was a fisherman. We ate a lot of fish. Ironically,
Fish and
And
potatoes.
yeah, and nowadays I'd be like, awesome, fresh fish and potato. As a child, you're just like, is the house stinks of fish, and you eat it every
Yeah.
day, and it's just awful.
Yeah. So talk to me. To talk to me actually, just while you're on it, talk to me about your
Yeah,
schooling, because if it's anything like the school on our island, it was like tiny classes, like 6 or
yeah,
7 people, like because there wasn't enough young people to fill up a classroom, right? So
yeah.
talk to me about your schooling that you remember.
Yeah, so I suppose at that point in my life, I remember aspects of it clearly, but I was very young. It was starting out as such. So at that point, I remember the school probably not too dissimilar. Small classrooms. I remember it with reasonably fond memories, to be honest.
Yeah,
Just being a young boy playing. It was right next to where we lived, the bungalow. So I remember at times my mum would be out and about doing whatever she was doing in the day, and I'd see her at the gate, and she'd feed us, siphon some food through the gates
yeah,
to
yeah,
us lunch or snacks and stuff. So I
yeah,
remember that with reasonably fond memories. But yeah, I mean, if we kind of on the topic of school, um, I would say after school in the Aran Islands, we went on a bit of a mad old journey, and I would say for most part I had virtually no primary school attendance,
yeah.
because we fled from the islands because my dad was violent to me, to my family, and particularly to my mum. So we kind of, for want of a better word, we just got the hell out of there. And it was with help from a local priest, actually, that we managed to flee. I use that word because that's what we did.
Yeah.
And yeah, so fond memories of school, not so fond memories of home. And then for want of a better word, we got the hell out of there. And then, because of the nature of life, from then on in, we were just on the move a lot. I think a lot of it was fear of my father finding us.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just moving a lot through Ireland still, but making our way up to Dublin. Eventually, we resided in Dublin for a number of years. And I think after leaving the island and getting to Dublin, that period being a good few years, I was starting school, primary school, almost like it felt like every other week. I was starting a new school, and I remember that experience being really traumatic, to be honest, because I was very young. I was starting a new school, new experience, new people, and I remember my mum leaving me in the classroom. And almost every time I would break down in tears. I still remember that now.
Yeah.
But
Tough.
yeah, there was no consistency with the education.
And the other thing is as well, I suppose. I mean, I know I can talk about this because I've been through it, right? But when you come from a small island like that, where everyone knows each other,
Mm.
whatever reason you're getting away, but when you go into a city like Dublin or Cork or anywhere like that, it's like it's mad, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not used to that world. You're kind of used to knowing everyone walking down the road and that sort of stuff. So when you flee something, what sort of age were you when you did get the hell out?
Get the hell out. I think it was probably, I was quite young. I think I would have been maybe 3 or 4. And so really young. But then from kind of like 3 or 4 years old, we moved a lot. As I said, we kind of, a lot of the time, I would say it was a mix of moving to a new home and therefore a new school. A lot of the time, I would say we'd be classed as homeless.
Yeah,
And at times I was homeless. Literally, I lived on the street for a little, only a short period of my life, which was, I say fortunate, although not so fortunate. But we were definitely homeless. We were squatting in disused properties, flat particularly. I remember that experience very vividly. We were in hostels, a number of hostels. And then, like you say, it was just on the move a lot. And the theme of mum meeting partners, new partners, they weren't particularly savoury characters. They were not nice people. A lot of domestic violence there that continued, and eventually we made our way to Dublin, and that was probably, in Dublin, was the longest period of stability I had for a while. And that was probably the longest sustained period of primary school in my life as well. And it wasn't an awfully long time, but I got some some level of consistency there with that.
Yeah. Nice. So tell me, I know obviously it must have been tough for your mum, right?
Yeah.
So tell me how sort of that impacted you, if that makes sense. Like, because obviously you're getting older, you're getting some consistency, but your mum still had to deal with the trauma she's dealt with. How did that sort of impact your family?
I think I think there's no doubt it had a massive impact, and I think some of that impact. I was thinking about this earlier on today, actually. So I'll jump forward and then I'll come right back. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
suppose to jump forward, all of that experience, or all of my earliest life experiences, the challenges, the experiences my mum had, and my siblings, has like no doubt had a huge impact on our family, on my mum, and I'd say on the lives that my siblings lead today, because it's very complex. It's like a mesh, really, of lots of things going on, and we'll come on to that as we move through the journey. So I'd say huge impact. But around that time, I was still quite young. I was probably, we moved to England when I was 9 years old. So I was still young, but it was having a massive impact on me personally. So from my perspective, I had virtually no primary school attendance. It was very fleeting. I was moving schools every other week. It was having a huge impact on my education. I was significantly behind. Again, I wouldn't have known how far behind other children I was at that time, but I just know I was behind educationally and academically. And I didn't enjoy school. Looking back, you'd be like, well, of course you didn't enjoy it because you didn't have the chance to have any consistent education and build meaningful connections and friendships and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wasn't enjoying it. I found it hard. And then there was a lot of other things that then came on the back of that, because I think for me, my behavior was challenging for my mum. At times, like, I was just, you could say, like, off the wall. I was mental. I did some really crazy stuff as a kid. My behavior was really, really challenging. And looking back at that, it could be to do with the fact that I may have had a condition that was undiagnosed. It could have been. I definitely think I had dyslexia, or have, just not diagnosed. And there could have been another few things going on there, but that was happening behaviourally. I think I was smoking at a really young age. I was learning. I could roll ups at 7, 8 years old.
Yeah.
And then I was angry. I was getting in a lot of bother. I was fighting a lot. And again, that was a theme that continued. So I was obviously just projecting a lot out into the universe. I was obviously angry. I was struggling to deal with all this, and it was reflected in my behaviour. And then I suppose, to answer the question about my mum, like, my mum's life was just mental, really challenging. And, she had to overcome an awful lot from her earliest years and that just continued. And she was, my mum became an alcoholic, but she drank for many years. And I think she then abused alcohol, and I think then she became that kind of manifests itself into having a problem with alcohol, and she became an alcoholic.
I think I mean, I'm not so much these days, but certainly growing up in Ireland, alcohol was a big part of everybody's life.
Yeah,
we lived on an island,
big part of
and
culture.
it had one shop and 2 pubs.
Yeah,
It was brilliant, but alcohol was kind of a part of life. But I suppose when you've dealt with that trauma, it then becomes for something else while you're drinking, right?
Yeah, I wonder whether it's like I sometimes see it as like a bit of a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
We have, like, I don't know what everyone has, there's positive coping mechanisms, and there are obviously quite negative ones, aren't there? You can abuse drugs and alcohol. And in my case, I just decided that I was going to use different coping mechanisms, like running and sport for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I think in the Irish culture, this is not a generalization. I think alcohol is a big part of that, and particularly in my family. So when I look at my mum's side, it was a crazy upbringing. They lived in Kinsale. She was born in Kinsale, which is a lovely part of the world. Small house, old style council house. There's 2 bedrooms upstairs. The toilet is, you go out the back door, back of the garden, there's a little hut, the toilet's there. And they convert the front room downstairs into a bedroom because there just wasn't any space. And my grandmother, so my mum's mum, I think she had about, and I had to check this because every time I say it, I think this sounds so bullshit. It sounds like I'm lying. She had like 17 biological children.
Yeah.
And in the house, and I told you this before, and in the house at one point, there was like, I think there was like over 20. So there must have been about 22 children. And what was happening was my nana and grandfather had 17 biological children. And then because those children were then having children, my mum was growing up with my auntie Linda. So my mum was actually Linda's auntie, but they were the same age in the group of sisters. Just write a book about this stuff because it's so mad.
Yeah.
So that was my mum's
big families as well over there was so common, wasn't it?
Yeah. But then the alcohol thing on that was, my mum, my nana, and my granddad both died of alcoholism. Lots of my family, so my mum's brothers and sisters, have gone early, I would say, too early, made it rest in peace, through alcohol, health, cancer, a lot of really, conditions related to alcohol abuse. It's in the blood, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. It's also one of the most brilliant places in the world, right? In terms of like when you go back there, it's the most friendly people.
Awesome people.
That culture of going out and the thing around funerals is crazy, isn't it? Because you go back and it is a celebration of life, and it's within 3 days, and it's really fast, and it's But great part of the world. But anyway, take us back to when you came over to England. Take us back to what that looked like, and obviously you went into care at some point. So just elaborate on that for us.
So I think, like I said, the theme up to 9 years old got me to Dublin. Life wasn't great at that point either. And there was still a lot of challenges. I think what happened was I was doing okay in school. And then I think for me, it felt like I remember that time vividly as well, because I think as children, you unfortunately remember a lot of the challenges and the bad times, and you sometimes forget the fun and the good times, right? But I was in Dublin, we were doing okay. And it felt to me like life just got turned upside down. Like I use the words like torn away, It wasn't that we didn't sit down as a family and consult and say, how do we feel about moving to England? Excuse me. It was just, I was torn away from school, torn away from my friends, and we literally just moved to Leeds, moved to England. And I'm still not 100% sure why that happened. My thought and what I understand is that my mum's partner at the time was ill, and he had a sister in Halifax, and we moved over so that she could play a part in supporting him, is my understanding. But essentially we moved to Leeds, and at the age of 9, and we lived in Seacroft. You won't know where that is, but an area in Leeds called Seacroft. I would say it's quite a disadvantaged area. And it was more of the same. My mum's partner who we moved over with eventually moved in with his sister to be looked after. And we went on a journey for 2 years where, it was another, meet another partner, not too dissimilar to the previous. I think my mum probably started to abuse alcohol a bit more at that point. As a coping mechanism. I started primary school, started in year 5 when I moved over, and I was just, wasn't engaged. I was truanting. We used to call it legging it. I remember getting into a lot of bother. I think for me at that time was particularly hard because I had a really hard Irish accent. You wouldn't believe it, but as my Irish was so thick, broad, it was, and kids, it was different, and kids tried to bully you. They tried to, capitalize on that. And I remember saying 33, and it was 33, and it was you're just taking the piss. And I got into, I would say at that point in my life, I got into lots more fights because I was new to school. Children were trying to it was all about pecking order and trying it on. And I'd come from a tough place in Ireland. Like I'd grown up the hard way. I'd had beatings from men. I had blokes punching me in the head. So I wasn't really too bothered about, getting a punch from a child in year 5. Like that wasn't me. So I just turned to that and I kind of made my mark on the school, and eventually people realised that, this guy's not to be messed with, and they left me alone. But yeah, I think around that time, a lot of truancy, not so much consistency in education, a lot of fighting. I was kind of just bringing myself up, I think. I was dragging myself up, and I think what you'll find is with probably yourself as well, Brian, and a lot of people who've had not too dissimilar experience to us. You find that they're very they grow up quick.
I think one of the words is like it's that resilience, isn't it? You grow the resilience around because you grow up a lot younger than you essentially you should. I
grow up quicker, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So talk to us about going into care, what that looked like, and tell us what that sort of looked like.
Yeah, so I think we were obviously, again, all this stuff is in hindsight. Because of the work we do, we understand the education system, we understand social services, we understand regulation, we understand policy.
I don't know whether we always understand it, Sean, but we go with it.
Yeah. Point well made. You kind of understand it exists.
Yeah.
But you don't understand that stuff as a kid. Point well made. You don't understand it as a kid. And we were obviously on social services radar.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of work in this space now as a consultant and in social care. We were on their radar like mad, and we had this situation where we were in Seacroft living with my mum. Excuse me. And like we had a very fractured household. My sisters were doing their thing, I was doing mine, and I think my sisters moved out first, so they went to live with friends, very young, and they were living with kind of a not so well organised agreement, and they were living with the friends. And I think for me, the partner my mum was with at the time was probably one of the worst, I would say. Real nasty man. That's me being polite. Yeah. And real arsehole, I'd say. Just horrible. And she was kind of trying to separate herself from that, but I just don't think she necessarily had the strength or the support to do that. And around the age of 11, I remember it was an awful, it was a dark Christmas, late December, a few days before Christmas, social worker picking me up from a hostel we were in at the time, and basically realizing that I was getting taken into foster care. And that was like just a surreal experience, a moment I'll never forget. That I've been taken away from my mum, effectively lost my sisters, been taken away from my mum. Me and my brother are going to a place in Leeds called Morley, the other side of Leeds, to reside with foster parents. And it's like I have no clue who these people are. I don't know what tomorrow looks like, let alone what the rest of my life looks like. You're kind of scared, you're anxious, you're putting on a brave face. But yeah, that moment was like, I remember it so vividly. It was just a crazy time in my life.
What's really mental is if you look at it, by the age of 12 in your life, right, you'd had no consistent school.
No.
You'd moved into a foster family where you'd had no consistent home.
Yeah.
And you'd had, and now you haven't got a consistent family around you. Because I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine your family was quite tight because of all the stuff you went through. I'd imagine your brothers and sisters and your mum, as hard as it was, I would imagine you got through everything together. I'm not saying it was always perfect, but what I'm saying is like it was always you five.
Yeah. I would say, excuse me. I would say that's. I would say the siblings, we squabbled, we fought, we argued, but I think we were tight and we looked after each other in a slightly dysfunctional way.
Yeah.
So, for example, I would never let. Part of the reason I was getting in so many fights when I was younger was because my brother was just a gobby, big mouth.
Yeah.
He used to, he'd be like, he'd walk up to people, he'd start trouble, he'd be like, yeah, right, well, my brother's going to sort this out. And I got into some real awkward, I'm like, I don't want to be fighting this big guy, it's like, you're really, but I'd always look out for him if anybody was trying to bully him or getting into bother, I wouldn't even ask questions. I would just look out for him. So I was very protective of the family in that way. I was kind of like the father figure from an early age.
That almost comes from I think, I mean, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that I haven't been through this myself, but I think it comes from a bit of a domestic violence background because you want to protect, right? So whether that be your brother's sister's mum, you become the protector, right, in that family, and you can't deal with bullies. So anyone that comes with a bullying nature, I'll sort this out because I need to protect people.
Yeah. And I was obviously, when you think about what I was doing was projecting what I'd seen in the household.
Of course,
outwards into the universe. You grow up around domestic violence and being beaten up by fully grown men. That kind of is kind of like a blueprint. That becomes your blueprint, and you think, well, that's what I do. I would say, to answer your question, we were definitely tight. I was tight with the family, and I did that kind of father figure stuff. And I think my older sister did a lot of the mother figure stuff. She did the cooking and made sure we were fed and did the shopping and made sure the uniform we bought. We had the uniforms for school and stuff. But yeah, we were definitely tight as a unit.
So in terms of foster care, in quite a young age, how many foster placements did you have in Leeds?
So I think one, in short. I think I was fortunate. So it's crazy to say going into foster care and you're fortunate, right? So you've got to kind of but you've got to understand the context. And I think when you work in this space and when you know what we know, you know that like young people, for want of a better word, get pushed around the care system and that is their experience. They bounce from home to home. They don't have that consistency. They don't have that stability. Placements break down. There's lots of stuff that happens in the social care world. If it's an allegation or a concern or lots of things that mean that children have to move on, unfortunately, and it's kind of more commonplace. My experience isn't as commonplace. That I got taken to foster care at the age of 11, and I stayed with those foster parents till the age of 18. And
so I wanted to pick up on that, right? Because I think that's a big part in why your success has been so good, because you finally got some consistency. I want you to tell the story in a minute about how you realised that you could run. Right. I want you to tell that story. But the reason I sort of said, because you obviously were in one placement for a long period of time. So when you talk about people that sort of have impacted your life, you talk about the priest that got you away. Right. And you talk about, I'd imagine your foster carers were they mentored you a lot in terms of teaching you the emotional regulation, the drive to be successful. And because you don't change from being a little shit here and then not a little shit here. So they would have had to deal with that as well. Do you know
they dealt with it. They dealt with it.
But that's what I mean. It's like, I think one of the things that really sort of stuck in my head about you is, as hard as the beginning was, you were then given the right tools to your story, and we'll get onto it about the university and the work you've done in there. You were given that actually between the ages of 11 and 19. You were given the tools to go and be successful, whatever it kind of looked like.
I think nailed it. I think there's a lot of like sliding door moments in my life or in life in general, but particularly mine. And there are lots of kind of things that are like critical to where I am today and how I've had success and how I've built on those building blocks. And I think, Lorraine and Phil, my foster carers, foster parents, like hands down, just like couldn't, I could never say thank you enough to them, or there's nothing I can do really to show them how important they were to me and are to me, and how important that placement and the stability of that has been for the trajectory for my life, what I've achieved, and the trajectory. I mean, hands down, like stability in. There's been a lot of research done around this as well. But stability in foster care in a home is like, it's so wildly critical to the outcomes of
Yeah, 100%.
mental.
And I see that in you. And I guess the other thing that I kind of see when I see you is that I know how important your wife is to you. And again, we'll get onto that. I mean, the work you guys do together is incredible. But the foster carers almost give you the belief in relationships again, right?
Yes.
So you've seen everything in your life.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that journey's easy between trust and believing in relationships, but they've given you the belief that they told you everything would be okay, and it kind of became okay. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then when you're building future relationships, my parents were exactly the same. They gave me the emotional tools they showed me the love. They showed me everything that they didn't need to. I always say they came and chose me, right?
Yeah.
But you know, I have struggled with relationships growing up, but they actually gave me the belief they're the people that I want to inspire to be like. And one thing you said there that was really interesting is they don't realise there's no thank you that you could give them. And what it becomes their normal, right? Their normal is taking young people off the street, looking after them and growing them.
Yeah.
Whereas to you, it's completely changed your life, right? And they'll know they're good people, but
awesome,
they'll probably never quite realise the impact that they have on people.
Yes. I think like being a foster carer is like, it's like hands down, like one of the most incredible things you can do, but also the most difficult.
Yeah.
Like, I think we need to, just praise to those in the social care sector, fostering, adopting. Like, it's a really difficult thing to do because you bring in like really challenging young people into your home, and that has an impact on your home life, your biological children, and like and just huge impact. We could go on all day about the fact that children come in with lots of challenges and they don't want to be there, and they present really challenging behaviours. They steal from you, they rob you, they smash your house up. And the challenging thing is, it's like, that's a young person that has a lot of challenges going on in their lives.
And they didn't create that.
Yeah,
right? So they're also dealing with someone else that's created it. So.
But then they're on the other side, and it's it's this really surreal situation you find yourself in, and I think it just takes really special people to be able to do that. And I suppose just to back up to the point earlier around me, I was that child because I came in at the age of 11 and didn't just gravitate towards these people and love them and trust them, and and I did misbehave, and I did continue smoking. I did continue to get in bother at school and fighting. I did continue to disengage in education for a period of time. So I had all that, and it took a long, for me, it's like, what we need to realize is that when you're working with young people who have been affected so significantly, and the life experiences have had such a big impact on them, that the work you need to do to kind of almost address that, or in part reverse it, takes time.
Yeah.
It takes
so
time.
What age did you? For me, like, I really struggled between them years of sort of 14 to 18. I was horrible, right?
Yeah.
It's as I've got older, I've really appreciated the work my mum and dad did, and they loved me from the outset. They were brilliant people. But I think at 18, if I'd have come and spoke to you, you probably wouldn't have appreciated the impact that they had. But it's as you've got older and seen that sort of, you would be thankful, of course you would. But it's actually as you get older, you look back and go, fucking hell. Like they're unbelievable people.
It's mental. I think there's something in that though, because how many children have you got?
I've got 2 myself, and then my wife's got 3.
Right. So, and I'm a parent to 2 children. And in any reading, so these are my biological children, and like apparently, well, children cost a lot of money. and they don't appreciate you apparently until they get to like 21.
Yeah.
So these children, my children, who are, I would say, very privileged, have an amazing life. We do a ton for them. I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah.
Bloody expensive, and but I love them. But like, they don't really appreciate you until they're 21, and they're going to look back, and then you think, well, if that's what my children, if that's their view, I'm a lad in foster care, been pulled left, right, and centre.
Yeah.
Don't know where. So you're right. It's like it's even worse. It's kind of like, well, I don't appreciate you now, and I do. Sorry, I didn't appreciate you then. I do now, but I think it kind of magnifies
of course,
because there is something in that anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I put them through. I'd say at times I put them through hell, and I think the thing they did was stick by me. And when I think about being in that placement and only that placement, a lot of that really is credit to them as much as me. It's more credit to them for like having, let's use the word resilience and the stickability, and could stick it out, and had the foresight to see that I was changing in a positive way. It was just slow, or the cogs were turning. Ever so slowly.
We talk a lot about rewiring, right? And I think kids in care need. I mean, especially with placement breakdowns again and again, be it family or losing siblings or whatever it is. I think the rewiring in young people in care is tough. And I think that's what they've done with you, is kind of rewired the bits that needed rewiring, and then you sort of work that out on the way. Right, listen, just quickly, tell me the story about how you realised you could run, because I think that's a big part of your university story, right? Is you were talking about running being sort of your way out in sport.
Yeah.
Tell me the story about how you realised you were quick.
So I was obviously. So I used to smoke a lot. I know I've got this tickly cough, but that's not related to smoking. I don't smoke nowadays. But I used to smoke, and I wasn't really into sport as such. Me and my brother, my foster brother, so I was close with him. We got up to a lot of mischief. There's a place in Morley called the White Rose Shopping Centre. It's a bit like any shopping centre. And we were just being like bored young lads getting up to mischief. And we went to HMV, and we're like, think of like Grand Theft Auto. We like tried to steal a game.
It was a Britney CD, wasn't it? Be honest.
I told you not to tell it. That was between me and you. Britney Spears CDs. Yeah, I love that, Britney Spears. But Grand Theft Auto game. Literally did a terrible job. Watched the CCTV after, and it was just atrocious, right? And we were like, kind of like this, looking over. It was like obvious, right? Two young lads stole this game, walked out of HMV. Security guy came out, and he was like, "Oi!" I didn't even turn. So my foster brother froze, stopped, hands up, whatever. I didn't think twice. I bolted out of the shopping centre. So literally ran, bolted out, ran the whole way home. So from the White Rose to like Morley was probably, I would say, easily 3, maybe 4 miles. And I shot the whole way home. Literally was just shitting myself. I didn't stop. Adrenaline was going. And in the house, there was a front and a back door. And I came through the back door. So through the back garden, through the back door into the kitchen. And as I opened the door, the police officer with my brother was coming through the front door, literally at the same time. I was like, shit, I've run all the way home. And I came into the house at the same time as a police officer with my brother. So that was pretty shit, because I was like, oh, fuck. But the brilliant thing, when I talk about these sliding door moments in your life, and I didn't realise at the time, but the police officer was like, we've just driven the car all the way from the White Rose Shopping Centre, 4 miles, you've run, and you got home at the same time as us. You've clearly got some talent. You've clearly got an ability to do some running.
Yeah, because that goes two ways, doesn't it? He can walk in there and go, well, actually, here you go, come with me. Or he can go, Jesus Christ, like, you've got a talent, use it.
And what an amazing guy he was, because he saw that I had potential. That sliding door moment, you can choose to, really come down hard on that young person, go to town on them. But what he said was, look, we're going to give you a caution, but, you need to nurture that talent, and, you need to get into running. You need to join a club. And then that kind of planted a seed. with my foster carers who were like, yeah. And, Phil and Lorraine, but particularly Phil, worked hard with school and my PE teacher and got me into a club, got me into running for Leeds City Athletics Club.
Amazing.
Just
It's
a
crazy, isn't
thing.
it? The story.
Just running home because he stole a game. It's like,
yeah.
It's so that was a sliding door moment.
Let's move on. So I think sort of talk to me about your wife, first of all, and then let's get into. I know there's so much we could literally talk for hours and hours and hours, but what I want to do is tell people, sort of tell me a little bit about the university stuff and the work you started doing in university and how that's kind of shaped your career, and then talk to me about what yourself and your wife do in depth now.
Yeah. Okay, so we fast forward a bit. Had there's some challenges on the way. So I think maybe, I'm just thinking where to pick up. So some challenges on the way. Went to university, not without its challenges. Did a degree in sports science. Then I went back to do a postgrad in sport and exercise nutrition. So my whole thing was sport. I was an athlete. I got selected to run for Great Britain. Sport was my thing, and that was my career. And again, when you talk about sliding door moments, I started working at the university as an undergrad student, they call them student ambassadors, and I was doing this work with a team called, it's widening participation in schools outreach. And I didn't know anything about that world. I just got a part-time job, fell into it. And I was working with young people, bringing them onto campus and doing events, working with primary school children. I was like, this is fucking awesome, man. Get to work with young people. Like, this is great. And I naturally gravitate towards people. I like people. I like talking to people. So this is awesome when I get paid to do this. I didn't know anything about that world. And what had happened was I clearly was quite good at it. I got quite excited about it. And I basically canned sport. I had a degree in sports science, postgrad in masters in nutrition. I was an athlete. I was like, I don't really want to do this as a career. And I got a job in working at university in a widening participation team, doing that, schools outreach, go into schools, deliver workshops to young people, bring them into campus, deliver workshops, deliver events. And I just loved it. And I did that, started in, I think it was 2009, built my career, loved working in the university, loved the team. And I wouldn't say I outgrew the university, but I got to the point where I was really, really passionate about doing the work. But I was finding that universities are large organizations. They've got like 3,000 staff, 30,000 students. The cogs move slow.
Yeah.
You want to make change, you want to affect change, you want to have impact. It's like, I felt for me, it didn't suit my personality. I like to get shit done. I like to, I'm big on like outputs. All the other stuff is just the steps to get you to the result or to get you to the output. And for me, it was all about like, how do I work with young people? How do I have a positive impact on them? How do I support them in their educational journey? Navigating some of the policy, the political stuff around universities that just cogs moving slow didn't interest me in one bit. And then linked to that, I was kind of like, where's my career progression? And I was just looking up and I was like, just a load of white boys in suits, boys club, load of old men in suits. And it's like, I'm not that guy. And then it's like, what do you do? So I had a wonderful career. I loved working there. I had some impact. I think, I was respected in terms of the university, loved the job. But my next step then was to transition and think, right, well, how do I do this for myself? I think naturally I'm quite entrepreneurial. I like business. I'm involved in investments and investing circles as well. So I like that entrepreneurial side of things.
Yeah.
And basically, I think for me, probably naively, which was a good thing, I set Cosmos up in 2017 in January. And it was naive because I didn't really know much, if anything, about business. I just kind of like, I just backed myself. I was like, look, I'm competent, I'm able, I've got some good networks, some good contacts. I can go out into the universe and take this risk and be brave and like just back myself and think, can I find some work in this, largely in this space, and just go at it. And that's what happened. And I basically, I started doing a lot of work. So at the time of working at the university, I was also doing, you might say it's like a side hustle, but I was doing some consultancy work on top of my full-time job within the social care sector. So I was working with local authorities and IFAs, they're called, so independent fostering agencies. Mm-hmm. And I was doing a very specific role for them. And I was a foster panel member, fostering and adoption. So what I was now doing was I was on the other side of the fence where prospective foster carers were coming to panel through what's called a Form F assessment. So new carers, and they were being assessed through a really detailed report that takes about 6 to 9 months to do. And that we were literally reading those, and we would make as a panel like a kind of multidisciplinary panel to make decisions on whether these guys are suitable to be foster carers or not. So that grew, did some fostering stuff, did some adoption stuff, did a lot of unfortunate things around kind of back to panel following concern, allegations. So we dealt with some of the heavier side. Excuse me. And then that just grew. So I worked with more IFAs. Eventually, I started doing what's called participation work. So I found my way back to working with young people at the coalface. And I was just like, it grew and I was just run ragged. I was like, me in a car, I did all the fostering stuff for like 8 or 9 different agencies. I was doing the participation work across like the UK because there's one agency I really, really like working with, had 4 sites. So I was working across all of those. I then got a contract with the University of Hull, 3 days a week, consulting. And basically, it kind of like, I don't know if mothballed, if you like.
Yeah.
And I was just doing loads. And basically, when I looked at it, and I was like, what happened was, I ended up, if you say you can do 20 working days in a month, I ended up with like 40 working days. And what I was doing was getting up at 5 in the morning, and I was just doing a day's work, and then that would close out. And then I'd do my second day, I don't know, let's say that closed out at 4 o'clock. And my second day of work would start at maybe 5. Yeah, and then I would work to midnight. And but that was the hustle of like being in business, but being independent and just starting out and not having the luxury to say no to anything.
One interesting thing I'll just take from that actually is, I think one of the hardest things in this industry, you talk about being on both sides of the fence, right? Mm. So you see the red tape over here, then you see the red tape over here, and you must have sat in situations where you were like, we can make this so much easier, right? So then that 6 to 9 month process, you're sat there going, if you did that better and you did that better, it would be much better, right? So I think one of the hardest things for me in this industry is like, I know I can help local authorities, but I'm also servicing local authorities.
Yes.
So if I went into local authorities, I could tell them where they're spending their money wrong in an alternative provision sense, right?
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of that up and down the country is like, I think it's hard not to be on the other side because you think if I was over here, I'd make better decisions. But they are also really struggling in here. So I meet some brilliant commissioners, some brilliant local authority members who are trying to do the right thing, but it's very red taped here, right? So it's like how you saw it as I need to go and change, right? Which is why you are where you are. But it must have been hard for you at times in that situation, looking at it from both sides.
Yeah, I think that's true I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think for me, it's true when I think about my university career. And then it's true when I think about the work I've done in social care, because that was the start of Cosmos and that was me before we grew and scaled the business. And so it's like career in a university, starting out in a very scrappy business where it's just me and hustling. And then as we've grown the business, we've then moved back into doing more in, let's say, the education sector. So I'm back working with the universities, large organizations, and I see it again. And to be quite honest, like if I'm just going to cut through it all, I find it quite sad.
Yeah,
You know, I
so do
find
I.
it.
I mean,
I find it sad.
I think naturally, if you want to help people,
Yeah.
that's also help people who want to do good things but a bit restricted. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
One of the things I loved about you both, it was the amount of work you do around data and research. Because I think it's one of the things we certainly struggle with, because especially in our AP, like if you're looking at it from a educational standpoint, if they're coming to us and not progressing in education because we're working around the SEMH needs of this young person, how are we celebrating the data around someone taking their hood down, someone feeling comfortable in a space for more than a day without not coming in, someone actually coming to a service? You know, I think APs alternative provisions struggle a lot with that data side. One of the things I loved about you guys is a lot of the stuff you do is based on real data, real research. And I'm not saying other stuff isn't, but I loved what you do around that sort of stuff. So you did a big piece, didn't you? Your wife was telling us on
segmentation.
Yeah. That's it.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. It kind of like moves us on a little bit from that point around, you know, red tape and challenges. And I think one of the things as well, I suppose, just to round that bit off, it's like, for me, I feel sad about that, because what it really does is it takes us away from like the mission. For me, if you're in this space, the mission should be to have impact with young people, right? Everything else is almost it almost becomes a little bit redundant. Yes, it has to be there, but it has to drive you to having impact with young people. So it makes me sad because we're caught up with red tape and bureaucracy and policy, and we're not actually having the impact with young people, and that really makes me sad. So, and it's highly inefficient. So that I just wanted to say that bit, because that will explain quite nicely, segue nicely into kind of what we do.
That's so true as well.
Yeah.
Like that is the thing I struggle with the most, is like there's a young person at the end of this. Let's cut away the shit and let's help. We're all, and the worst thing about it I find as well in that situation is we're all actually pulling in that direction.
Yes.
Like everybody wants this for this young person, but there's something stopping us here. But yeah, sorry to cut you off.
So I think fast forward and kind of segueing in, you're right. We do an awful lot. So we have like two arms of the business, and they both very much complement each other. So we have a research function, and then we have like an engagement and delivery function. So the engagement delivery is, what are our programs? What are our workshops? How are we out there delivering those to students, to young people in an educational setting? Right. Well, how do we build a product around that so that we can serve more young people? So we've built out a technology product, the Engage platform, and we've housed all of our content, and we license it because obviously that's much more scalable. So that's like the end point. But before that, like in our organization, through all of our research function, everything's driven by data and insight. So when we're putting together content, there's loads of examples here. So when we built out content for our Engage platform, and a lot of it we built out post-COVID, what we did is we just delved into the research. So we didn't just go and say, we think, finger in the air, we think students like this, we think this would be beneficial. No, we dived into the data. We looked at the research that we were doing at that point around working with hard to reach young men. We looked at the research we were doing around the BAME community. We looked at some of the stuff we were doing. We did like a mental health, huge piece of work around mental health, a mental health survey with 1,000 undergraduate students. We're like, what can we take from that? What insight can we take from that to bring into what students need right now in a post-COVID era? So that's an example of and then you start by pulling together the content and the workshops and the programs. You don't lead with that. So that's one thing we do. There's another one. So the piece of work you talked about around the FE segmentation, like we've built an awesome product around this. And what we did was we worked with nine of our clients, partners. They all fed into this piece of research, and we got a commission. and we did a piece of research around like further education students. So, and it's called a segmentation study. Now I can sound quite knowledgeable about this, but I'm not the researcher. It's my partner who does it. I just know what we do and I can talk about it. So we did an FE segmentation piece of work, and it's something that the private sector use to like an awful lot. And it's like looking at your customers and saying like, what segment do they fall into, and how do we sell X to that segment and X to this segment? But no one really does it in education.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it was one of the things that like blew me away, because I was like, why are we not doing that? Like that, and I think it's like everything, right? Until you're educated on it, or you see it, or you see how it works.
Yeah.
It's hard to think about that, right? Because you're thinking about a lot of other stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was phenomenal.
Yeah. So with that study, we took 35,000 students. So we surveyed 35,000 students, and we used that data and that insight to produce a report for our clients. We did a national report, we did a regional report, and that was very detailed to say, look, in your region, because that's the other thing, people talk about the national picture, but actually what's happening in your region, what's happening in your colleges, in your schools right now. So we gave our clients that, and what we did was we built out, through an algorithm, we got some very intelligent people, way more intelligent than me, to build out using an algorithm to help us build out this. It's like a diagnostics tool. It's basically like a profiling tool. So when we license that to our clients now, and like they're using it, they love it. Yeah. When you've got like 100 students coming into your workshop, you don't know who those students are, and you don't know where they've come. You don't know the background. You don't know what the needs are. You don't know where the strengths and weaknesses are. And what we do is we get them before the event to complete a short survey. And what that does is it segments them into one of 4 segments. So what that means as a practitioner is that you can use those segments, understand what the strengths and weaknesses are, and you can direct your workshop in the appropriate way.
Everything becomes bespoke to the needs, right? So you're going to learn like this. This is the best way you learn, and this is how you get the best for yourself, right? So I mean, it's genius.
I could talk about it all day, but But also, last thing on that is one of the big challenges is, when you think about earlier, we were talking about red tape and we were talking about challenges. I think when you think about funding, in our space right now, year on year, our clients' funding has been reduced. So when you think about reducing your funding, the business person in me and the entrepreneur thinks, okay, well, let's work with that funding, but let's work in a smarter way. So what you can use, a tool like a segmentation tool is saying, right, well, we used to do work with 1,000 students, and we used to just do this generic thing. Well, now what we're going to do is we know that those 900 don't need X, because the tool tells us that these 100 need this workshop, that 100 need that. So it can allow you to be more targeted with your spend and not 100%. Just
that's what I think is really difficult sometimes. Is like you're actually spending more initially, but you're saving more further down the line. I talk about it often. Like if you know how people learn, you can be more bespoke with that learning and get it right, rather than getting it wrong 3 times to then get it right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It comes down to impact.
100%.
It's impact. Are you having, in my world, you could take somebody on a journey for 3 years and throw a load of stuff at them in terms of interventions, most of which don't stick. And then when you come to doing, because that's the other thing you need to do, is actually measure the impact. So that's at the start and at the end. But if you're not having any impact and you've spent tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, what's the point? So it's
what's really mental, you talk about the funding going down, which it is, the needs are going up.
Big time.
So it's like getting that balance between the both. Listen, the last thing I want to ask, this might be my first one over an hour, Sean, but
well,
it's all good. We could talk all day, but what would be your 3 bits of advice to anyone listening, either around life, business, what would be the 3 bits of advice you'd give to people?
Yeah, I'd have to think about this before. I'll try and keep it brief so we can stay.
Mate, honestly, as long as you want.
Yeah, I think for me, like one of the things I've realised is, because I work a lot with young people, and I think this is true for adults as well, is to sometimes underestimate the power of like friendships and, connections and just being a good human being, being nice to people, connecting with them on a human level. We sometimes, with people, you can focus a little bit too much on money as a currency. But I think, if you focus on the people around you and building strong connections, that becomes powerful currency.
Yeah,
that becomes
100%.
kind of social. I call it like social capital, and it's that thing of like, your network is your net worth.
Yeah,
I really like that because
yeah.
it's easy just to kind of like, not to kind of prioritize that sometimes. So that's one. I think advice I give to young people a lot is, and I think this is probably true with a lot of adults as well. Don't let your kind of the charge be always led by. Don't let the charge be led by money over passion. I think sometimes it's easy just to chase the money first, and as well as I do that just leads to burnout.
Yeah.
But I think for me and you particularly, and I know from speaking to Rich and other people in this space, we're deeply passionate about what we do, and because of that, we turn up, the version of our best self. We put, a lot of value out there in the universe, and we get rewarded for that. But we're passionate first over chasing money, and I think I see it a lot. A lot of my friends, when we were early career, I jumped into widening participation work, starting on a salary of maybe £23,000, and they were in graduate schemes at large corporate banks, and they're still there. They're earning good salaries, but I can't say they're in love with the work. Let's say.
Yeah.
So that's the other one, and I think for me, something I'm focusing on. I think sport and health has been a big part of my life, but as I'm getting a bit older, it's just look after yourself physically, mentally, and kind of emotionally. I think work can be tough sometimes, and I think it's easy to just lose yourself in it and forget about yourself. And I think it's all right being working hard and striving for, if wealth is if wealth creation is what you want in life, but you need to be around long enough and have your health to be able to enjoy it. So those would be my three. Some of them a little bit philosophical, but I believe we need to.
Yeah, no, I love it, Matt. I think they're all so important. Last question.
Connection, purpose, and health, I think, is the three words I'd say.
100%.
Yeah.
What the last thing I want to actually ask is what does the future look like for you? What's next for you?
Yeah, we've exciting times. So we want to continue to grow Cosmos, and particularly the products that we have. The research, the res tech, and the ed tech products, and we want to do that because we feel like we can reach many more people, through that approach. So I think from Cosmos's perspective, to grow the products, grow our reach, continue to do good work in this space. And we will obviously talk off this podcast about lots of things that
we've spoken about.
Yeah, because there's a lot of exciting stuff going on, and we want to be involved in that as well, continuing to see how we can kind of work together and partner. So that's the future for Cosmos, and I think for me on a personal level, to just try and, I think, take my own advice and carve out a little bit more time for maybe getting a bit more balance between business, investing is the world I'm involved in, and the family. I think, I'm hitting a big milestone in terms of age. I'm 40
There's one more thing
year.
I actually want to ask you, because what really interested me when we met was you are always constantly trying to better yourself. So from what you've got a successful business, right? You're doing well, and it's a brilliant, impactful business that sort of gives you your needs as well, right? Because you're giving back to the people that you want to give back to, and it's having that purpose. What really interested me with you though, and I think some entrepreneurs forget this, and people, is like you can constantly be better. So can you just talk about the kind of help you've had, or the mentors, or the people that are sort of you're working with to better yourself? Because I think it's important for people to know.
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship, business ownership, it can be a lonely world, and I think there are times where you'll get to a certain point where you can't necessarily have conversations around business and investing with your friends, because if they're not in that world, they don't understand it. So I think it's important to have somebody that you can talk to and have those conversations with. And I think for me, like, I didn't realize this, but I am, because of my early years in education, I kind of just thought, I'm not really into education. It's not really for me. But as I've got older, I've realized that I am actually deeply passionate about learning, and I love it. So what I do is, and probably for the last, say, 3 to 4 years now, is I've been involved in some kind of mentorship or mastermind or personal development program. And I do it every year. I've just finished my third this year. I've been involved in a year-long business and investing mentorship with a mentor. The year before that, I did another business investing type mentorship. That was, a lot of that was more online. So year on year, I'm always investing in myself. I'm always trying to improve my knowledge around business, investing, just being a better person, health, all of that stuff. And on a practical level, my advice is, what I do is I take annual earnings, whatever that is for people, and I just take 10%. So every month I have an allocation of 10% of my salary goes into a pot, and it's there. I don't spend it on a monthly, but if I see a mastermind I want to do, or I see a program, I've got one that lined up that I'm going to do this year, the money's there. So just 10% of your salary every month into a pot, and just do it, because I think, like, for me it's exciting, but also, like, it just, I don't know everything, and I've got an awful lot of learning to do. And
I think that's one of the common things, isn't it? You think you've got to know everything when you run a business, but you're so far from that. But there is always someone that can help you, who has been through that. Mate, listen.
The last one on that, I think,
go on.
Just on that, I think the other reason to do it is that you accelerate the journey into knowing. So we start as, like, unconscious incompetence. We don't know what we don't know. I just started out in business, and let's make it happen. But when you surround yourself with good people and mentors, you just accelerate that journey. So what could take you maybe 3 years working at yourself, you could do it in 6 to 8 months with a mentor. So I think 100%. That's crucially important. But
I
that's
love
my last point.
No, I love that, mate. And listen, like I said, I mean, I haven't met many people that I think the synergy's been so good. When I met you, it was brilliant, and your story, what you've achieved, what you and your partner have achieved, is a massive credit, mate, and you should be so proud. And I'm really excited about working with you, however that looks in the future. I know we've got a few ideas we're bouncing off each other, so really looking forward to it. And everything will be under the episode around about Sean's business, and go and have a look. And thanks so much, mate.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Awesome.